Every day, nearly 50,000 Americans wake up on board aircraft carriers. 5,000 men and women stationed on each of a dozen active carriers face some of the most challenging and dangerous jobs on the planet. In a world that is three-quarters ocean, carrier crews can launch and recover aircraft to almost any place at any time. When not engaged in combat, they rehearse their dangerous duties around the clock. A modern aircraft carrier is the single most potent tool of warfare in the world.
When something happens in the world, the first question always is, well, where are the carriers? Our whole reason for being in existence is to be able to go anywhere in the world and launch these airplanes so that they can do our nation's bidding.
Today's carriers have no problem defending themselves at sea, but every cruise starts in port. Without her powerful jets on board, the port is where the ship is most vulnerable.
What we've got right now is a big push for the force protection. And my security guys are stationed throughout the ship so that we can protect the ship in case of any kind of, like, say, swimmer attack or even a small boat attack. You know, since the USS Cole incident occurred, we've really stepped up on those force protections. My guys stand around with their M16s and their 240s or M60s strategically so that we can protect just about every inch of the ship. If worst case scenario comes, the last resort, we have to take them out, we'll take them out.
A normal deployment is 6 months, but during times of crisis, that mission can extend to nearly a year. The average age on board is 20, and many count the days until their return. The work will be 7 days a week, the majority of it training. The mission? Train for combat, train for safety. Most safety lessons in the Navy have been learned the hard way, through injury or death. The ropes that tie the ship to the pier can break and snap back, injuring sailors and dock workers. Today, the traditional double-braided nylon ropes have been replaced with safer Kevlar lines.
Double-braided nylon hit their maximum breaking strength. They'll break, and it has a snapback, which is more dangerous than when Kevlar. Kevlar, when they break, are designed to drop, so it would probably pull off the cleat of the bollard from the pier before it would do any damage to the line of the ship.
When all systems are go and the lines are safely on board, it's time to move 90,000 tons of steel out to sea. As soon as the ship has left port, it's time to train. Fire drills, crash drills, and, like any ship at sea, man overboard.
On our boat deck, stand by, we're recovering rig. Helmets on, chin straps down, stand by your lines. And everybody stand by, we're going to walk through procedures. Come over and we'll do a debrief on our man overboard.
This is a carrier. We have a lot of people working in the flight deck. We got aircraft in the air. God forbid something happens. Either people get blown overboard or you have aircraft in the water. That what makes it our job here on the boat deck is very important because we're the ones who are going to go and pick them up.
In spite of being the largest ships in the Navy, carriers are also among the fastest. 2 nuclear reactors generate an astounding 250,000 horsepower. propelling the ship and its crew upwards of 35 miles per hour. The empty flight deck spans 4.5 acres. When the ship reaches open seas, it awaits the arrival of the carrier air wing. One by one, the multi-million-dollar jets arrive, flown by the Navy's elite fighter pilots. Each sailor is an expert at his or her role. On the flight deck, they cross paths with countless deadly forces. Spinning propellers, jet blast, and high winds are just a few of the perils.
There's a lot of different colors of jerseys that you see on the flight deck, and the jersey that I'm wearing is yellow. That represents aircraft directors. They're the ones moving the aircraft around on the deck. There's also some blue shirts behind me. Those are plane handlers. They chock and chain the aircraft. Also, they're tractor drivers or elevator operators. There's also green shirts. They're the technicians that operate the catapult and arresting gear that launch and recover the aircraft. There's also some red shirts behind me. Those are the crash and salvage personnel. And also purple shirts. And those purple shirts are what we call grapes, and they are the refuelers. They refuel and defuel all the aircraft.
White shirts have just one purpose: ensuring the safety of every man and machine on the flight deck. Every colored shirt knows how quickly disasters can happen. On a carrier, there is no such thing as an accident. The only variables are the reliability of equipment and proper training.
So they're highly trained personnel that we have on the flight deck. And the reason they have to be so highly trained is because of all the chaotic nature of the flight deck and directing these mammoth aircraft around. There's so much going on and so much danger and bad things that can happen, so it takes a lot of skill.
Every carefully choreographed movement is based in training. Training derived from costly lessons that have been paid for in blood.
Right here is the number 2 wire. We have 4 arresting gear wires on board. And actually you're seeing there's 2 parts to each wire. We have a cross-deck pendant and what's called a purchase cable, which feeds down into the deck. Each cross-deck pendant can take about 100 to 125 catches before it's considered overstressed and we have to throw it away. There's an amazing amount of force being caught by these wires each time an aircraft lands.
Directly below the wires is the arresting gear room. Bosun's mate Steve Tate operates the powerful machines that bring each plane from around 150 miles per hour to a standstill in 3 seconds.
Basically, the aircraft lands, engages the cable, and pulls a fixed set of pulleys in. And it pushes this ram into this cylinder right here. And it forces all the fluid out of this cylinder and out this piping right here at 10,000 psi. It flows up through here, and this is the constant runout valve. This is the heart of the arresting gear engine. This is essentially right here is what stops the aircraft. 308 gallons goes from here all the way up through here and around to this accumulator in 3 seconds. So the friction creates a lot of heat.
After each trap, the cable retracts. Within 20 seconds, the deck crew is ready for the next incoming airplane. Directing aircraft during combat operations starts in flight deck control, located just off the flight deck. Lieutenant Commander Michael Singleton is the aircraft handling officer, known as the handler.
It gets the most stressful when equipment goes down, catapults or the arresting gear goes down. Some aircraft has landed with an emergency or something like that, and those do happen quite often.
Whether positioning aircraft for takeoff or lowering a damaged plane into the hangar bay for repair, the handler predetermines every movement.
On the flight deck, stand well clear. Lowering aircraft elevator 3 to the hangar bay. Stand well clear. Lower all 3. Lower all 3.
Like a master chess player, he positions precise scale models of every type of aircraft on an outline of the flight deck called the Ouija board. Before, after, and even during flight operations, every available body is enlisted to do the FOD walkdown.
Hey, you guys filling the gas over here.
FOD stands for Foreign Object Damage. Even the smallest bolt, screw, or scrap of metal can damage an expensive jet engine or be propelled like a bullet across the flight deck. 4 stories below is the hangar deck, where aircraft can be stored and repaired. Every inch of floor must be examined regularly for FOD. Flying jets into combat is risky enough. The Navy takes no chances when aircraft come aboard. With 5,000 men and women on the ship, work takes place around the clock. To feed these sailors, meals are prepared constantly in each of 4 full-service galleys. Breakfast, lunch, then dinner, followed by a full 4th meal called midrats, or midnight rations. When one meal is completed, preparing the next meal begins right away.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Smitty, go bring me a case of muffins. Thank you, sweetheart. Yeah, hold up on it, okay? When you down to your last 2 pans, that's when you make more mashed potatoes. Other than that, don't make no more.
Below the flight deck are 10 stories, packed with situation rooms, living quarters, and machinery. 5 miles of passageways lead to 3,000 doors. A sailor can spend an entire career on a carrier, and there will still be parts of the ship he or she has never seen.
Where we are right now is in 2 Bravo Shaft Alley, about 80 feet below the waterline, toward the stern of the ship. The purpose of this shaft alley is to hold the weight of the shaft and allow us to turn the screw through the water. And this shaft itself is about 200 feet, 300 feet long, and turning a screw that's as big as a house. In my job as main propulsion assistant, I turn the shafts, but there's a lot more that goes into making the ships run and getting the planes off the deck as the flight ops progress.
One of the most critical but unseen components of carrier operations is jet fuel, called JP5. Every 7 to 10 days, the carrier must pull alongside a supply ship, shoot lines across, and take on hundreds of thousands of gallons of JP5. Without this valuable fuel, jets can't fly. But JP5 does much more than just feed hungry jet engines.
At any given point in time, we have around 2.4 million gallons of JP5 on board. JP5 normally has 2 uses. One is for delivery to aircraft. The other use is to kind of balance out the ship. Whenever fuel is moved around, we have to move more fuel to help balance it out, ensuring that the flight deck is safe for aircraft to land and launch off of.
With a level flight deck provided by carefully balanced tanks below, flight deck crew can work more safely and maneuver aircraft tractors on a flat surface. The tractors themselves are powered by JP5, as are, of course, the jets, whose afterburners can consume it at the staggering rate of up to 150 gallons per minute. In spite of its enormous size, the flight deck is not long enough to launch and recover aircraft without a constant 25-mile-per-hour headwind to provide lift. The carrier itself creates that wind with a combination of engine power and direction. On the bridge, The captain and his command team work the latest technology to control the ship with precision.
You see state-of-the-art digital displays, touch panel display. You see displays that provide the conning officer, the person who's actually giving the orders on where to put the rudders and how to set the engines, displays for him all over the bridge so that no matter where he's standing, what task he's doing, in an instant he can look and determine where his rudders are, how his engines are set, what course the ship is steering, how fast the ship is turning.
But what sets a carrier apart from other big ships in the ocean is that all its power and maneuverability is designed not for sailing, but for flying. In fact, the Navy takes flying so seriously, it even puts a pilot in the captain's chair.
The commanding officers of aircraft carriers have traditionally been aviators because it's more than being just a big ship. It is an airport. It's an airport that goes anywhere in the world, an airport that uses a diverse population of airplanes. A pilot who has that air sense is incredibly important to the success of the operations. As good as we aren't perfect, and there are times when there are malfunctions with airplanes. There are times when our execution isn't exactly right. And someone with that air sense is incredibly important in the supervision and in the decision process to make sure that we preserve these million-dollar assets that we have out here as airplanes, and of course, even more important, the aircrew.
Catapult officers are also aviators. From inside this protective bubble, Stephen Schmidt shoots airplanes off the flight deck. The steam-powered machines he triggers are called catapults, or CATs for short.
Cross, thumbs, watch track, fire. I'm Lieutenant Commander Stephen Schmidt. I'm one of the shooters here on the ship. We're the last check in all the safety concerns of getting the aircraft in the air. Everything from whether the aircraft is safe for flight to the catapult being safe to launch them. We have a pretty busy job. It's a stressful environment by nature, but it's a managed stress. So we get them in there pretty quickly when we have all 4 cats going. We have 2 more cats on the waist. I can usually get them about 20 to 30 seconds apart that way.
The 4 catapults are operated by superheated steam generated by the 2 onboard nuclear reactors. When the shooter presses the fire button, the catapult accelerates from 0 to 150 miles per hour in 3 seconds, bringing airplanes to flying speed in just 300 feet of deck space.
Knees out, thumb up, Bill. Weights across. Checkers like them. Salute. 450 clear forward. 450 clear forward. Lights, winds cross. Thumbs, head still steady. See ya. Good job.
With jets in the air, the landing signal officers, or LSOs, prepare to bring them in. Lieutenant Commander Christine Acton mans the LSO platform at the stern of the ship.
We're up on the LSO platform, and this is basically how this works. We've got airplanes in the air, they come around, and we land them on what we call a glide slope.
The glide slope is the downward angle the pilot must follow to land perfectly on a moving carrier deck.
The LSO is watching aircraft state, the deck statuses of the aircraft carriers, as well as what the energy state is of the airplane. The LSO can see that before the pilot's going to see that, before the airplane's going to react.
When the pilot isn't on glide slope, or there is any problem on the flight deck, the LSOs trigger the wave-off lights that tell the pilot to abort the landing.
We have pitching decks, we have bad weather. There are definitely inherent risks in what we do.
When something does go wrong, the results can be devastating. In just seconds, airplanes can be lost and lives irrevocably changed. What you've just witnessed is a rare occurrence, but unforgettable for those who survive it. As this single-seat FA-18 Hornet traps, the arresting cable stretches to the breaking point. When it breaks, the plane quickly disappears over the side and into the water. Training saves the pilot, who ejects immediately. This yellow shirt miraculously jumps the cable as it whips under him, not once, but twice. Other well-trained crew members are not so lucky. As the cable snaps back at over 100 miles per hour, it takes out everything in its path. 7 crew members are injured. 3 in serious condition are immediately evacuated by helicopter. The cause of the mishap is later determined to be mechanical failure in the arresting engine. A horrifying lesson learned in the hardest way. When disasters happen during a war, combat operations must proceed. Dozens of heavily armed aircraft can be in the air at any time, and cool heads must prevail. This is Combat Direction Center, or CDC, one of the most secure locations on board the carrier. Lieutenant Commander John Datka is the officer in charge.
I'm the air defense officer on board the ship, and I'm one of the ship's 4 tactical action officers. We have various consoles everywhere. The first console you see there is our strike controller. He's going to go out and he's going to be the first person that talks to our aircraft as they take off and go out to do their mission. He's also going to be the first person they talk to when they come back. So if we send out 20 airplanes, we want to make sure we have 20 airplanes coming back and not 21.
In CDC, 80 personnel work shifts of 8 hours on, 8 hours off, 24 hours a day. No matter how hectic the situation gets up top, CDC stays focused on the big picture.
Well, as things heat up, it becomes very quiet and it's very dark. We usually have the lights all the way down, and our job is to keep the situation calm and controlled and to make sure that we follow the procedures and we go through things by the book. So as things escalate, you would hope, and what we train to, is that the tempo here comes out the exact same.
For the Navy, a dozen aircraft carriers conduct operations no matter what circumstances confront them. Some fight in combat, while others train to take their place. But whether training or fighting, it is the people that bring the thousands of components of an aircraft carrier together.
The most amazing thing on this ship, in spite of the wonderful technology and the speeds and the powers and all those great numbers that we talk about, is watching the people work. Watching those young sailors who have been in the Navy less than 6 months, who have been on board this ship only a couple of weeks, standing out there on the flight deck and directing an airplane, hauling a fuel hose, making things work day in, day out. That's what it's all about. It's not the big numbers, it's not the technology, it's about the people.
So that we can protect the ship in case of any kind of, like, say, swimmer attack or even small boat attack. You know, since the USS Cole incident occurred, we've really stepped up on those force protections. My guys stand around with their M16s and their 240s or M60s strategically so that we can protect just about every inch of the ship. If worst case scenario comes, the last resort, we have to take them out, we'll take them out.
A normal deployment is 6 months, but during times of crisis, every day, nearly 50,000 Americans wake up on board aircraft carriers. 5,000 men and women stationed on each of a dozen active carriers face some of the most challenging and dangerous jobs on the planet. In a world that is 3/4 ocean, carrier crews can launch and recover aircraft to almost any place at any time. When not engaged in combat, they rehearse their dangerous duties around the clock. A modern aircraft carrier is the single most potent. That mission can extend to nearly a year. The average age on board is 20, and many count the days until their return. The work will be 7 days a week, the majority of it training. The mission? Train for combat, train for safety. Most safety lessons in the Navy have been learned the hard way, through injury or death. The ropes that tie the ship to the pier can break and snap back, tool of warfare in the world.
When something happens in the world, the first question always is, well, where are the carriers? Our whole reason for being in existence is to be able to go anywhere in the world and launch these airplanes so that they can do our nation's bidding.
Today's carriers have no problem defending themselves at sea, but every cruise starts in port. Without her powerful jets on board, the port is where the ship is most vulnerable.
What we've got right now is a big push for the force protection. And my security guys are stationed throughout the ship.